Hey everybody, welcome back to the K2N Online Paddle School. We're back here on YouTube for another episode of the K2N blog. This week we're talking more about coaching and receiving information, how to process it, and some of the bigger ideas that can go into being a good coach or being a good student. As you probably saw from the title of this video, we're talking about instant gratification. It is one of the worst attributes that we have as modernized humans within our current structure in society. So many things happen instantaneously, right? And we expect so many different things throughout our everyday life to be instant gratification. Now, normally this is a conversation where you would pose it to kids that are younger, right? That are using devices and they're getting all kinds of a dopamine release system because of this instant gratification. But this also travels through all age groups, and it also travels into what activities we choose to pursue. And so we're pre-designed to want instant gratification. Platforms like Instagram and TikTok are designed to give you a ton of information in a very short, compact video because people like that, right? Your brain has all of these electrical signals that travel through it that are all positive, right? It's releasing a chemical that makes you feel good, right? So when you tell somebody something and it reinforces an idea they already have, or it's an incredibly simple phrase that allows them to understand the concept instantly, people like this and people will gravitate to this. And there are other things that we do that point to instant gratification. When we look at paddling, it is one of the highest technically demanding sports on the planet, right? If you want to be really good at it, your ability to move every joint of the body in under a second while wielding a tool and grabbing a state of matter that does not have a defined shape in water, it's super difficult, right? Understanding concepts, understanding movement, putting these ideas into practice. There's not a lot of instant gratification that comes from the progress that you make individually. And so when we look at the success of a team sport like Dragon Boat or even the OC6, instant gratification is able to integrate its way in, which is a huge draw for the majority of people on their outlook in sport. I can go out and join a team that is already fairly pre-established, and I can rely on the team's effort to push my success rate up, right? 19 superhumans dragging me along with them, whether I'm paddling or not paddling, may or may not hinder their success. And so I instantly get to be part of that success by being nearby a club that's already good. Sprint racing also leads to some potential instant gratification. Being able to place in your age categories, boat divisions, and different distances, this continues to segregate the competition down and down, so you only have a small pool of athletes that you're racing against. And so your ability to place highly amongst these segregated groups in a short amount of time is very high. And in sprint racing, the margins for success are now in the seconds, right? We lost this team by 10 seconds or 5 seconds. These are small numbers when you just say them, right? So it bolsters up this idea that we're close to them, and you are, right? Because there's not enough time for most boats to get away from each other. Most boats finish in a very close proximity to each other. This isn't such a punch to the ego. Man, we lost by 1 or 2 seconds. We can regroup and get better and work as a team. There are so many dynamics that go into it that are very gratifying. On the opposite end of the spectrum, right? Being good and winning an individual race is incredibly difficult unless you're in a super low population paddling area. But if you were to go somewhere and there are 100 people within your racing division, the chances of you winning the event or making top 3 or making top 5 is very low. The chances of you finishing a few seconds behind somebody over an hour or 2 hours of racing is incredibly low as well. And it's a real kick to the teeth when you're racing somebody for an hour and they beat you by 15 minutes or 20 minutes or 25 minutes, right? Because it spotlights how inefficient your movement is, right? It is not gratifying at all. It is a tremendous blow to your ego, and it makes you kind of spotlight how seriously you want to take the sport because it is a lot less satisfying to do. We talk about this, these aren't like massive extremes where people don't do it all across the board, right? people like the challenge, people revel in the difficulty of these pursuits, and obviously we are all bound by that, right? The reason that you're watching this video is you are likely looking for insight into getting a little bit better. When we look at the number of participants within a sport, right? Dragon Boat will have like 7,000 participants at a world level event, and most small boat races will never have 1,000 racers on the course at the same time. We can kind of identify some of these variables and see which directions the sports are going based on this instant gratification. Making personal progress is incredibly slow and arduous. There are things that I'm working on in my technique that I'm going to elaborate on more a little later in the video, but even for me, right, it is frustrating and difficult because muscle memory is so powerful. Muscle memory forces you to do something instantaneously. And so now when you try to adjust some of these little ideas, it's difficult because your body is literally pulling you into a specific position, right? So to go out of that position and to break through some of this muscle memory, there are a lot of things that you have to do. And again, none of them are gratifying. You have to paddle slow, and you have to feel stupid, and you have to feel like you don't know what you're doing. And these are all things that don't make you instantly feel good about making progress. The point I want to touch on before going into my personal technique is when we look at instant gratification, one way that we can pinpoint this is the thought process of purchasing new equipment to go faster, right? And so the reason that we're drawn to this idea of buying a new paddle to go faster is because it's instant gratification. I purchase a product, I use the product, I go faster, right? And you can see how there's no personal development. There are no trials and tribulations of getting better and forcing yourself to go through this arduous route of spending more time on the water and working more meticulously on your movement. You get to instantly reap the benefits of doing something as simple as purchasing a product. Now, does a new paddle make you go faster? 99% of the time, no, because it's about how you are wielding the tool. If you buy a $500 fancy new paddle, but you have a $1 stroke, it don't matter how you're wielding it, right? There is not going to be this instant surge in performance based on using a more expensive tool. They make concert quality guitars that are $15,000 to $20,000 to $50,000 each. And if I were to hand that to a novice, the implication that they would instantly know how to play the guitar because it is more high quality is silly. But we take that approach with paddles, where we want to buy a product to make us better because it's on that spectrum of instant gratification. It is hard and difficult to look inward and make that personal progress, but it's easy to look extrinsically and find these things that I can just latch onto. So this obviously for me as a coach is a major issue because I find it disingenuous when marketing says things like the paddle will make you better. The paddle will get you X amount of more force on the stroke. You will go percentages faster. The paddle will teach you how to go through a stroke, right? These are all things that placate into instant gratification, and it is a marketing gimmick to make you make this purchase. And it's disingenuous to what real end result is going to be. And from a business standpoint, it is much less lucrative to have this discussion and to tell people, hey, it's going to be long and arduous and difficult, because people don't want to buy that. They want to buy the instant thing. They want to buy the pill that makes them lose weight. They want to buy the potion that makes them put on muscle, right? But people don't want to diet and people don't want to exercise. They want the instant gratification. Boats are also on the spectrum, but when we look at actual vessels, there is a % chance that when you get into a higher quality paddling craft that you will instantly go faster, right? So that is a conversation that is more situational to your current skill level and the environment that you paddle in. If you put somebody in a giant 60-pound ocean vessel and then you put them into a 15-pound flat water vessel with no stability demands, they will likely go faster with the more optimized craft. And the best way to look at that aspect of the vessel that you're using is the goal should be to make a slow vessel move fast. That way, when you move into the faster vessel, you are proportionally going to go faster. The pitfall of this is if you are slow in a slow craft, the chances of you continuing to be slow in a faster craft is also present, right? Being able to hone your skills to make a hollowed out pumpkin move fast is a showcase of your overall ability. So when you do get into the optimized racing craft, you can only go faster. Stand-up paddleboard is the worst about this right now. There are so many consumers that buy a 21, a 22, or 23-inch wide stand-up paddleboard, and they look mortified as they're paddling because if they blink too hard, they're gonna hit the water. So their inability to move bars them from the ability to move that vessel fast. So we have like this whole generation of new sup paddlers that are on a craft that is too tippy because of the idea of instant gratification. If I buy the 22-inch wide, I will learn it and I will grow into it and I will eventually make it move fast, when the real strategy should be use the 30-inch wide board. Make that thing go 4.5 or 5 miles an hour. Then when you get onto the narrower one, you can only proportionally go faster, or you can identify, hey, I can't move freely. I can't do the things that I could when stability is not an issue anymore. And now I'm limited in how effective I am with my movement. And instant gratification, if I just purchase the really narrow one, I will probably go really fast. And then after making the purchase and after a period of time has elapsed, this person may be sapped of the enthusiasm of continuing in the sport just because they didn't know that it is a long-term goal, not a short-term instantaneous one. So again, it's something to keep in mind. When you do sports, when you do individual sports, you are likely going to get some reality check at some point, right? And it's a good thing because it's all about the long haul. It is all about making progress over a long period of time. Robert, I need to knock 25 seconds off of my 500-meter time trial and I have 3 weeks. That's not how this works, right? That timeline that you're looking at is likely extended to 5 years if you make a full commitment to this idea. But people want the instantaneous. I want to knock off all of this time and effort instantaneously. And learning technique is the fastest gateway to get there. But again, it is one that is slow and arduous, and you have to find the joy in that journey to be effective in the long term. If you're looking for things to happen instantly, you're at a higher % chance of burning out and quitting and never making this progress. Be ready for the long, arduous road, and it is more gratifying in the long term than being able to do something in a very short period of time. So looking at my personal technique, right? So I have been trying to adjust my hand position within the stroke. And this is where some of the YouTube videos get lengthy, because we have to talk about everything in its totality. If I produce a video that is 2 to 4 minutes long, it is instant gratification. I may get more views, and a lot of people, oh man, this is great. But within that, there is a limitation in how much information you can convey, right? And so some of the comments will become, you forgot to say this, you forgot to say that, I've heard it this way, I've heard it that way. So by having the longer form content, right, I can have all that information in there. Also allows people to dial in exactly what we're looking for. So the tips that I'm working on, I'll give you the simple cue and I'll explain how you could morph that incorrectly, and I'll show you how I'm trying to use it properly. Within my canoe stroke, I'm trying to get my top hand higher. So if you were just to tell somebody that, here's a 30-second clip, get your top hand higher, get more leverages, go faster, right? The problem with this is there is 100 different ways that you can get your hand from a low position to a higher position. And what we're looking for is very specific. We need to understand why the hand being higher is a leverage advantage, but we also need to figure out how these joints interacting and coming up to lift up the hand is just as important. If I tell you to lift your arm over your head and you do this, guess what? You're wrong. And now when you do 50,000 paddle strokes with your arm extended like this, you're gonna run into joint pain and you're gonna solidify some muscle memory that you have to break later, right? So getting this elbow to drop back down is now gonna be this long, arduous task because we took a 30-second clip on get your top hand up higher. What causes shoulder discomfort in the long term is your elbow's position in relation to your shoulder, right? So by raising this angle here, right, it puts more stress on your shoulder. So how can I get my hand higher up if I don't raise my elbow, right? So when I take a stroke currently, my elbow and my hand is typically in a position like this, right? And so all I have to do to keep the same exact elbow position is to turn my hand in this orientation to get my hand up higher than my elbow, which is also higher than my shoulder. So going from a position that looks like this to a position that looks like this does not compromise my interaction with my elbow and shoulder, but it increases the amount of leverage that I'm creating in the stroke. The higher up this hand is, the more force that we can get on it. I'm keeping all of the same leverages with my torso, my hips, and my arm, but now my hand position as I push into this higher leverage position should give me more power. I was watching paddlers that were in a two-person canoe, and they both had their hands at the same exact height, but the front paddler was in a position where their elbow was flared up. So in order to get your hand up higher, if this angle stays the same, is by lifting it this way. And you can see that this puts strain on my shoulder potentially. So the front paddler looked like this, and the paddler in the back looked like this. So the hands in the same exact spot, but their elbow position was different. One major point though is the person in seat 1 is 25 years old and the guy in seat 2 is 45 years old, right? So their differences in age may showcase how much strain they can put on their shoulder. I want to lean more to the other side where I don't want to wear out my body because I got to be doing this when I'm 100 years old. So having my elbow position to place my hand slightly higher without doing any additional work is something that I'm working on. Within the kayak stroke, when I have started strokes in the past, my arm has been a little bit more straight at the elbow position. And then as I interact with the water, my positive blade angle has been limited because of this, and I push my elbow early into the stroke. So a lot of the leverages that I create with the kayak stroke have been inherently less because of my top arm's position. Bringing my top hand closer to me has been the cue that I've been looking for. It allows me to get more positive blade angle, and it allows me the opportunity to keep this arm position into the stroke and then extend it late into the stroke to create this positive blade angle and hold it for slightly longer because of my arm's position. Those are all pretty simple, right? I'm trying to go from here to here, and I'm trying to go from here to here. But those few inches, again, I'm empathetic. I go through the same things that I'm trying to teach everybody else to go through. When I go on the water and I don't think about it, my arm instantly goes out, my top hand instantly drops down. And these are things where you have to focus on these cues in order to look at it and assess, this isn't where I want it here instead of here, right? I want my arm closer to me instead of further away. And if I don't think about it for a stroke or two, it will go back to what my muscle memory has predefined it should be. Paddling slow, paddling with a lot of force on the paddle, not trying to race. These are things that allow me the opportunity to trickle in new movement patterns in order to be more optimized in the long run. Right now, when I do these things, I don't instantly go faster, but I know in the long term, it is going to establish more leverages. And so when we talk about purchasing paddles, right, for me, getting a tool that is slightly longer than the one that I have been using allows me to change the leverage with my top hand coming up an inch or two without compromising how I'm wielding the paddle with my bottom hand and the rest of my body, right? So having a tool change to morph an idea, these are things that actually lead to tangible differences within your performance, right? But the paddle by itself means nothing, right? Identifying how I want to use it and working backwards so it fits me perfectly, now making this paddle purchase can potentially lead to a performance gain. Never a game of instant gratification. It is always pulling teeth and thinking about movement and not being sure, is this ever going to pay off? Am I ever going to get fast? Is that guy on YouTube full of crap, right? But there are so many things where you just have to kind of commit and stick with it and see the light at the end of the tunnel as you make this progress. The training footage this week is going to be mostly outrigger canoe. I got 4 new paddles and I was able to use each of my paddles in the craft that were ordered for. So I got an OC1 paddle, OC2 paddle, OC6 paddling paddle, and an OC6 steering blade. And I was able to use all of them in the OC1, the OC2, the OC6, and steering the 6-man. Thank you all so much for checking out the vlog series. This is coming out on Christmas. So Merry Christmas if you celebrate Christmas. If not, Happy Holidays from our family to yours. Thank you all so much for the support. It's been an excellent year so far, and we're really excited going into 2025. Thank you all again, and we'll see you all next week for our next K2N vlog episode. Hey everybody, welcome back to Lake Hernando. So working on my top hand position, elbow position, and doing this helps me rotate a little bit more, but you can see getting my hand over my head, but my elbow is still about shoulder high, so it's nice and comfortable. This is the 41-inch long paddle from Viper that I picked up. You can check out our latest YouTube paddle tip or gear review video to check out the paddle. So this one is 49 inches, designed for the OC1, 8.6 inches wide. I'm using a longer paddle here. This is the OC6 paddle for paddling, and it's got the sexy lady design on there. And so I paddled a mile today, and it was 36 strokes per minute, which is pretty low, but I was still able to maintain under a 9-minute mile while doing this. This paddle is 50 inches long, and the blade is a little bit wider and longer than the last paddle. This one's about a 9-inch paddle. I think it's 8.8 inches wide. And just working on the length in the water, taking a nice, long, powerful stroke. Having my top hand slightly higher means that the stroke is a little bit longer. The paddle being longer helps facilitate all this. So again, just some ideas that I'm working on personally. And this drill specifically, 36 strokes per minute, gives me plenty of time during the recovery phase to set up all the leverages that I'm looking for, and then I can use those leverages by pushing really hard through the stroke. So you can see here I get 16 feet per stroke, right, which is a big connection with the water and a lot of glide. A lot of people I paddle with, they get frustrated because I'm able to get so much distance per stroke, so I can just, paddle and make it look fairly effortless, and I kind of fly away. And part of it is the success of a lot of little ideas coming together and expanding constantly. This one, top hand being 3 or 4 inches higher, something I'm trying to use to my advantage. So the same sexy lady paddle, but in the OC6. You don't see me in the OC6 paddling that often because I'm normally in the back steering the vessel, but it was a lot of fun getting to the vessel here last Saturday and going through the motions. You can see that my top hand does go over my head a little bit as we're in this vessel. This boat sits up a little bit higher, so the 50-inch long paddle is no longer long, it just kind of fits. But you can see that my elbow, hand, and head position is slightly different than normal. Normally my hand is in front of my forehead or eyeballs, and now my hand is slightly above my head as the blade tip touches the water. So far, I really enjoy these paddles. I think each shape is really fine-tuned for exactly what I'm trying to use them for. The next paddle is 48 inches long, and it's designed for the OC2 specifically. The OC2 sits a little bit lower with the cockpit for more stability since you have 2 people in it. And going through the paddle strokes with a second person helping you means that the blade that I chose was a little bit larger. So this one's, I think, 9.1 inches wide. It doesn't sound very wide. A lot of industry standards have paddles that I feel are very large for most users, and myself included. So 9.1 inches in this vessel feels adequate. This is me and my wife paddling and giving it a little hit at the very end of our workout. It was just kind of a chill paddle, but we hit 8 or 9 miles an hour and a little. This is a sprint. This is not our normal paddle pacing, but she's using the longer 50-inch paddle in the back for fun. I'm making her paddle like 100 strokes per minute. The steering blade, I don't have a lot of footage of me using the steering blade. This is my wife in seat 6 using the new steering Viper Va'a paddle. So I'm up in seat 3. This is the same footage with the different camera angle. So when you're married and your spouse also paddles, your personal equipment becomes our personal equipment. But yeah, obviously I have no problem sharing gear because, people in our club use the paddles, and it's all about using, nice high quality equipment to enjoy the sport overall. So going through, I'm steering the OC6 here. And this is some of the footage of me with the new steering blade. I didn't have the camera set up behind us, and I didn't think about it until after our practice, but we're OC6 versus my wife here in the OC1, doing some sprints. I'm sitting on the gunnel here poking because I don't really need to paddle to have the crew keep up with her in this scenario. But yeah, overall, being able to use each of the paddles and the environments that they're designed for, a lot of fun. So the editing that goes into these YouTube videos is almost as in-depth as doing these type of videos here. So I made these 2 for Instagram this week, and they took me longer to make than I want to admit. So I figured I would just add them here at the end of this video as well, just because I'm gonna spend all the time making these videos. I want more people to see it. So overreaching being a term talking about your muscles and your position, not about where the blade tip touches the water. So when people are trying to minimize overreaching, they think they want a shorter stroke, which is not true. You want a super long stroke, but you want to keep your posture. So if you can spot the difference here in the postural change, then you can understand overreaching. Don't overreach with your torso. So this is an extension of that, right? So this would be too short in the water. People don't want to overreach thinking that the blade can't go far in front of them. So they want to put the blade in at their feet, take it out at their hip, because they're worried about negative blade angles slowing down their boat. And now all of a sudden they have a really short stroke. and they don't have the space to move their whole body effectively, so the boat doesn't go fast, right? I have the speedometer on there at 6 miles an hour, and then you can see I'm paddling fairly gracefully, taking a big, long, powerful stroke, and the boat speed goes 7-8 miles an hour here, right? So you can see how much longer of a stroke is involved when you rotate. Rotation is length, length is power, and power is speed. Thank you all so much for checking out the videos. If there's anything you'd like to see in the immediate future or in the distant future, feel free to leave a comment or send an email anytime. Thank you all so much again. See you next week for next week's K2N vlog episode.